Hi, welcome or welcome back. Today I'm going to be sharing pieces of relationship advice that you have received and that you weren't sure if you should follow. You will already find parts 1, 2, and 3 here. As always, these come directly from you, and I'll break each piece of advice into 3 parts. First, I'm going to go into why there is some truth in it. Then I'll share why I disagree as a relationship coach. And then I'll share an alternative to this advice to better support you in building a loving, healthy relationship. I'm all for having access to relationship advice and content, but I do see so much misinformation out there. So this is designed to help you make your own informed decision as to whether or not you should listen to the advice that you hear. The first piece of advice that you've submitted is trust can't be rebuilt. Once it's broken, it's broken. I get why someone would say this, especially if they've been hurt in the past. When you've been hurt, all your brain wants is to protect you. Your brain's main job is to keep you safe. And giving someone another chance is risky because you can't control the outcome. What if the trust gets broken again? There is just no guarantee that it'll work out, and so it's just safer not to give someone another chance. It's safer to not get hurt again. Again, I get why someone would give you that advice and why you might think that yourself if it's to avoid potential hurt. And I also agree with the fact that trust cannot be rebuilt in a situation where the person who broke the trust is not taking accountability, is not willing to make things work. We cannot force someone to do something. Now, here's why I disagree with that advice and why I believe that in some situations it can be really unhealthy. Saying that trust cannot be rebuilt is a very black or white way of thinking of things. It's rigid. And when we become rigid, it's the reactive side of us that's showing up. That's the side that's been hurt, so it's very understandable. The thing is that suggesting that trust just cannot be rebuilt does not take a couple situation into account. It does not give someone the benefit of the doubt, and it doesn't give someone a chance to make up. Not only is every situation unique, but people are capable of learning from their mistakes and making changes if they want to. There are all sorts of reasons why trust might have been broken, and I break the most common ones in the video where I talk about infidelity and how to rebuild trust, so you can definitely check that out. I will link that in the description below. Some of the happiest couples I know have had the biggest challenges, including broken trust. So I just can't agree with this black or white approach of once trust has been broken, it's broken. It's not always true. Most of us make mistakes, some bigger than others, and like a client would say, we are not finished products. There is room for growth in a relationship. So while I'm not excusing toxic behaviors or abuse, I am looking at that from the lens of we do make mistakes. How much are we giving ourselves room for growth? Rebuilding trust is a process, and it's a chance for couples to not just go back to the way things were before trust was broken, but actually take this as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship, to learn from the mistakes, to clarify what needs to happen moving forward, clarify what happened in the past for trust to have been broken in the first place, and then actually walk the talk. All of that is a process that can strengthen a couple because when you're able to overcome challenges as a team, you create deep levels of trust. If you can go, we've been through this big storm and now we're on the other side, you actually end up feeling much more confident about your relationship. That's when you give yourself a chance to rebuild connection and start off from a very different foot. So instead of believing that trust cannot be rebuilt, how about thinking about it this way? Once trust is broken, it can be rebuilt if 1, I've had space to process my own hurt and then decide to give my partner another chance. 2, my partner takes accountability, meaning that they acknowledge the hurt that they've caused, they acknowledge their mistake, they understand the hurt that they've caused, and they are willing to do what it takes to rebuild trust. They're willing to actually take the steps towards that. 3, both my partner and I understand what led to trust to be broken in the first place. 4, we understand what needs to happen from now on for that not to happen again. And 5, if we both decide that we're going to rebuild trust, I need to acknowledge my partner's efforts, I need to encourage change, and I need to be willing to celebrate the wins. I need to be able to celebrate what is actually going well and what I'm seeing improvements in. I've outlined these 5 steps in detail in the video where I talk about how to rebuild trust with a specific spin on infidelity and how to rebuild trust after infidelity, although you can use it for other cases as well, whether you're the person whose trust was broken or who broke the trust. You will find value in it in both cases. The second piece of advice you've asked me to address is love your partner the way you'd want to be loved. Feeling loved is a basic human need, so yes, you want to focus on how you make someone feel loved, how you give the love, how you express the love on a day-to-day basis. Because when someone doesn't truly feel loved, they will start to check out from the relationship in one way or another. Suggesting that you should love someone the way you'd want to be loved back comes from a very good intention. If you know how you want to be loved, it gives you so many ideas as to how you can express your love to someone else. Now, the reason I don't fully agree with that advice is because what if I told you that everyone has a preferred way to give and receive love? It's not the same for everyone. Loving someone the way you'd want to be loved back might lead you to actually make efforts in the wrong direction. Maybe your partner wants to be loved in a very different way, so they are not recognizing all of your efforts and they are not appreciating those efforts. We can have the best of intentions and make all of the efforts we want to make in a relationship to show our partner love, but if it's not what our partner receives the best, then we're just making efforts in a really wrong direction. We're going to burn out. We're going to miss the mark every single time, and that will lead to frustration and eventually resentment. This is a huge mistake that I see couples make, again, even if they have the best of intentions, and then they wonder what went wrong. You don't have to give and receive love exactly the same way to be loved by each other. You can speak different languages and still communicate and understand each other. What you need to figure out, though, is how you each prefer to give and receive love. Maybe what your partner values the most or what you value the most is physical touch. Maybe you want to hold hands more often. Maybe you want a hug more often. Or one of you feels loved by words and actually needs to hear words of appreciation, words of affirmation, words of recognition. Or maybe you go by the motto of actions speak louder than words, and so for you, a random act of kindness is much more important than hearing something kind from your partner. Of course, you can value all of these things, but you typically have a preferred way to feel loved, something that really lights you up, something that really truly makes you feel deeply loved by the other person. A practical resource I recommend to figure out how you each feel most loved so that you can actually meet that need is called the 5 Love Languages. It's not the only tool out there, but it's a really, really practical one. It's one that I found very convenient, and it's the very first resource I've used in my own relationship to help us get out of a rut in the early stages. You can literally type the 5 love languages on the internet and start figuring out yours and your partner's. I also have an in-depth masterclass that's self-paced to help you figure out what your love language is, figure out all of the ways that you can actually identify your partner's love language, all the ways that you can express the love their way, and communicate what you also need and how they can express love your way, and then the concept of dialects that helps you take it even a step further and make sure that you're using the love languages to your advantage. It's less than $100 and you have access to it forever, so I'll link that in the description below if you want to check it out. Instead of loving someone the way you want to be loved, you need to love someone the way they want to be loved. It's a very big difference. And you need to get very specific here, because if not, you just won't know where to put your efforts, whether it's you or your partner, and that just leads to so much frustration. Don't assume you know what your partner needs, and don't let them just assume what you need. And if you're trying to figure out how your partner feels most loved and you actually ask them, but they then say that you should know, you want to clarify your intentions. So you can, for example, go, "Hey babe, I know you think I should know, and maybe I should, but I'm really confused right now, and all I want is for you to be appreciated and supported. I really want to understand you better. So if I'm asking you what you need, it's for us to be more connected, it's for us to feel like a team, for us to be on the same page. So really lead with that intention. And remember that you're doing this because you want to put your efforts in the right place. Just making efforts in a relationship isn't enough. You need to know where to put them. The third piece of advice is when you know, you know. For some people, it's true. They have this deep sense of intuition and sense of knowing that someone is right for them, even if they have no logical explanation to it. So yes, some people do experience that when you know feeling, which is why there is truth in that advice. Now, the reason I believe that that advice can actually be harmful to help you build a healthy relationship is because, first of all, it's not true for everyone. And second, because it adds that extra pressure to find the right person quickly and smoothly. It assumes that there should be this moment where you know, where you have that deep sense of certainty, where you have that deep sense of intuition that's guiding you. And that's not everyone's experience, so that leads to doubts. I've had so many clients experience big doubts because what if I don't have that sense of knowing? What if it's not that obvious? Is that a sign that the person I'm with is not the right person? Some of the healthiest, happiest couples I know have actually taken time to develop a deep connection and decide if they were a right fit for each other. Some have gone through couples therapy, some have done other types of work. It wasn't that instantaneous feeling of knowing. They actually needed to figure other things out first. If you think about it, staying with someone and committing to someone long term depends on many factors. That could be your values, your life goals, your personalities. That can take some time to figure out. Plus, relationships by nature come with uncertainty. Even if someone tells you with absolute certainty that they know that their partner is the right one, nobody can predict the future. We need to accept that uncertainty, learn to navigate it, and focus more on what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, because That ultimately is the only thing that we can control. We can only control what we're doing today. We can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. So here's an alternative I want to offer. When you know is true for some people, but not for everyone. So if I don't know right away if my partner is the right one for me, and like that's the person I want to spend my life with, or that's the person I want to commit to, then it doesn't automatically mean that they are wrong for me. What's more important than chasing that feeling of knowing is being with someone who is willing to make the relationship work, is being with someone who actually makes efforts, is being with someone with whom you can learn to navigate challenges because challenges are part of a relationship. It's being with someone with whom you can align on what is important for each of you for the relationship to work. Someone with whom you can have conversations about your life goals, about your values, things that are really important to help you determine if you're really compatible in the long run. And the last piece of advice I'm addressing today is if you have relationship anxiety, you should leave. In some cases, it's true. Some relationships cause anxiety because they aren't good for you. Maybe you worry if your partner is the right one and you start to develop doubts because there is a big reason to doubt. You want to look at what's causing the anxiety because there might be a huge red flag that's signaling you to leave. Okay, so here's why I'm not a fan of that advice at all. Our brain is designed to keep us safe. That is its primary function. And so symptoms of relationship anxiety like doubts, fears, worries, insecurities, that's your brain trying to keep you safe. And it tries to keep you safe by doing things like looking for what's not working, thinking about what might go wrong, jumping to conclusions, comparing to others. And so that can happen even in the healthiest relationships because again, your brain is designed to keep you safe and it has these automatic tendencies. Relationship anxiety can show up regardless of who you're with. Of course, there can be people with who you experience more anxiety than others for a lot of different reasons, but thinking that the solution is to leave the relationship every time that you experience anxiety does not empower you. This just keeps you in a cycle of not addressing the anxiety. It doesn't leave room for growth, and it doesn't help you explore what's actually going on. You need to remember that we are the common denominator in every single one of our relationships. And so the real question is, why is my anxiety there? And how am I dealing with it? How am I dealing with my insecurities, my fears, my worries, my doubts? We won't find stability and peace of mind if we believe that the anxiety that we're experiencing is out of our control or is caused by our partner. Our partner can be the trigger, but the emotional experience we have says more about us than them. So instead of believing that if you have relationship anxiety, you should leave, how about thinking about it this way? If I have relationship anxiety, it does not automatically mean that I need to leave the relationship. It does not automatically mean that my partner is wrong for me. And it does not automatically mean that there is something wrong with me. First, I get to ask myself questions like, when do I typically get anxious? What triggers it? What typically happens for me to get anxious? I can also ask myself, what do I typically tell myself when I get anxious? What's running through my mind and how does my body react? And then I can question where my anxiety comes from. Most of our emotional experiences and the way that we feel today is rooted in our past. And then I can ask myself, what is the anxiety showing me and what can I do about it? If you want to feel empowered and confident in your next steps, you first need to understand your anxiety. Most of my clients experience anxiety, and 9 times out of 10, they're in a relationship that is healthy, and so they work on learning how to deal with the anxiety, how to deal with it in constructive ways so that they avoid sabotaging a great relationship. I'm not saying it's all on them though. Sometimes I work with their partner too to help manage the anxiety and address what's going on in the relationship, but in most cases when I work with the individual first, it's enough to help them learn to deal with their anxiety. Managing relationship anxiety involves things like emotional regulation work, so how you deal with your emotions. It's also self-esteem work. It's learning communication and conflict resolution skills. It's boundary work, so how you set healthy boundaries. Dealing with our anxiety depends on these different things, and it's not something that we automatically learn. I mean, how many of us learn to set healthy boundaries? How many of us learn how to regulate and navigate our emotions? How many of us learn how to communicate effectively with someone? To me, it makes sense that so many of us experience relationship anxiety, and so if you do experience anxiety, just know that you're not alone and there are ways to navigate it. I remember a client who showed up in our first session and she had just been to the doctor and told the doctor about her relationship anxiety. She was immediately prescribed with pills, and it was the first time she had experienced that, first time she was actually going to take any pills. And so she wanted to challenge that. She wanted to see if she could avoid taking those pills. So she gave herself 6 to 8 weeks to work on her anxiety with me. And I can tell you that by the end of those 6 to 8 weeks, she had not taken a single pill. Of course, we had monitored her, we had looked at how safe that was, we had looked at all of those things, but what she actually just needed to do is learn to deal with the anxiety. She had never learned how to do that. By the end of our time together, she threw her pills, She even gave them away to someone who actually needed them more than her, and she never looked back. I'm not against medication to deal with the anxiety, but you do want to make sure that it's not just a band-aid solution and it's actually supporting you. So again, experiencing relationship anxiety does not automatically mean that you should leave, that the person is bad for you, or that something is wrong with you. It's a question of how you're dealing with the anxiety and why it's there. You do want to understand the anxiety, look at what's causing it, and understand it so well that you feel empowered. It's not about trying to find someone you don't experience anxiety with. It's about learning how to navigate the anxiety when it shows up so that you can confidently determine your next steps. All right, thank you so much for watching and for submitting the different pieces of advice. If you have some of your own that you also want me to address, just make sure that you leave them down in the comments below or DM me on Instagram at Toolbox for Love. Like this if you learned something new and tell me what you learned in the comments, and subscribe if you want to be notified for the next part of the series. In the meantime, you will already find parts 1, 2, and 3 here. All right, thanks again for being here and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.